Okay, so here's the instructions for lab number 11. This is due in 2 weeks, not next week. So you have 2 weeks for this. It's a website called Purpose Games. Here's the URL, the website name, but there's also going to be a link on Moodle. Just click on the link and I'll take you to it. And so let's look at that. So here's the link called Purpose Games. Just click on that. It'll take us to the website. So this is just a bunch of quizzes on here, and then and these are all about nervous system, all of these. And there's way more about other topics, even non-science topics on this website. I just found this a couple nights ago. It's pretty cool. And these are all labeling of brain parts and neurons and reflex arcs, which we haven't learned about yet. So click on this one. And first, before I do this, I found out on my office computer, and then I tried it on the computer in the anatomy lab, and I couldn't do this website because it would say that I need to disable the ad blockers, and it spent a half an hour trying to figure out how to do that on my office computer. I finally did it, so it would allow ads to pop up, and it still wouldn't work. So I thought maybe somebody told me it's probably in the Wi-Fi here. But then I tried it this afternoon on the computer in the other room over there, and it worked. I haven't tried it on this one yet, but let's see. So here's one of those quizzes, and it says press play. Actually, it's just this arrow up here. So there's that. It says I can't do it because you need to turn off the ad blocker. I don't know. This is three campus computers I've tried it. It worked. One in room, one or two over there, it worked. I was able to do it. So I don't know. On my laptop computer at home, it worked fine. So I hope this won't be an issue for any of you. But because you have 2 weeks to do this, don't wait till Wednesday night, 2 weeks from now, to try this and then find out you can't do it on your computer. If you try it, try it ahead of time. That way, if it doesn't work on your computer, you have time to do it on another computer. But anyway, no, I need to just copy it from the afternoon section into yours. It'll just take a few minutes to do that. So anyway, on this one of those quizzes, I didn't even press play. Once it starts, you just anyway, it's just identifying parts of the brain. Each of these little dots, you just click on the dot. Where it says press play, there'll be the name of a brain part, like cerebellum or something. So you find the dot on the cerebellum, you click on it, and if you get it right, it gives a beep or something. If you get it wrong, it gives you a frequency sound. So there are, I think, 10, it says nine of them to identify, and there's a timer where it says 8. There's a timer, and I don't know if that's 8 minutes or what. It doesn't seem like that long when I do this. Time goes pretty fast when you're trying to identify these as fast as you can. But you try to identify all of them correctly within the time before the time is up. And so you need to get 100%. But you're allowed to do it as many times as you want. If you go through it one time and you don't have 100%, I think up here where it says define here, it'll have the word again. So you just click on that and you can try again. Um, so there's unlimited attempts at this. So just do it as many times as you can to figure out what all the answers are if you don't get it right the first time. Just some trial and error. You'll figure them all out. There's some things on some of these quizzes that I didn't really cover in class. Some things like the motor cortex and sensory cortex or something like that, I think is on this quiz. And I didn't really say you need to know that, but if you get it right on this quiz, you have to. So it might take some trial and error to get some of those right. But so when you get it when you do succeed in getting 100% on it, it'll have where it says 0% here. That's your proof that you did it. Um, just take, with your cell phone, take a picture of that screen with 100%, or if you don't have to do a screenshot on your computer, that's fine. Either way. But there's a whole bunch of these, and I looked at most of these and found the ones that I thought were good or worth doing, and I put them on this list. So there's a list of 13. So the first one is Brain Anatomy by Gallagher, LHS. I'm not sure what that is, but that's the one that I pulled up first. That's this one, Brain Anatomy by Gallagher, LHS. And then next one, Reflexar. That's this one. I think it's Human Body Systems. This one's on the list. So I got a list. I made a list of 13 of them. And you just have to hit any 10 of these and get 100% on it. You look at it until you get 100%. On any 10 of these 13. When you get 100%, it's just a picture of it. Bring it down 100%. And then I'll have a quiz. If we talk about quiz number 1, like some of the previous. But this time we'll have 10 photographs of screens of the seems like a lot, 10 of them, but it won't be that. It's kind of fun, and this will help you. By the time you do a bunch of these, you'll know the brain parts pretty well. A lot of these different questions. Some of the same stuff in different ways. So it'll help you learn this stuff. And this is, I'm trying to come up with another lab. And I found this website a couple of I thought if you like physics like this, you can look for more. See what other topics that you would use. Maybe next semester we have online quizzes, online labs. Chapter 13, we need to have a lot of time left, 20 minutes or so, but we can see the rest of chapter 13. And just recording. It's chapter 13, that A, it says 13A, but more down, So we went through the parts of the brain last week. The left and right hemispheres. A little bit about the functions. Just, you don't need to know a whole lot of details about the functions of the parts of the brain, just basically. Just a little bit about what goes on in each part. Talked about the meninges, the three layers of tissue that cover the brain and the spinal cord. That cerebral spinal fluid, brain and white matter, spinal cord. Blood flow to and from the brain to the blood vessels. Blood-brain barrier. Cerebral spinal fluid. We wondered about this somewhere. So this is a transverse section through a brain showing these hollow spaces, the ventricles in the brain, which we filled with cerebrospinal fluid. There's also cerebrospinal fluid out here in the subarachnoid space between the arachnoid and pia mater. And in the top of these hollow ventricles here, there's what's called the choroid plexus, which is where the neuroglia cells that produce the cerebrospinal fluid are located. Arrows showing the direction of the cerebrospinal fluid. So it flows around the surface of the brain through the ventral granus, the spinal column. And we talked about the brain waves. You don't have to be able to identify brain waves. The 12 pairs of cranial nerves. You should know that some of them are sensory only. So they only take information from some sensory organs, sensory receptors into the brain, and others are mixed nerves these days. And a nerve is a bundle of axons. So the mixed nerves include both sensory and motor neurons. They take information to the brain. These cranial nerves they're numbered and also has a meaning that tells us something about every group, what kind of information they carry, where the information is from. Olfactory. The word olfactory means smell. Vision. Ocular means eyes. Motor means controlling the muscles. There's a little sensory front face. There's 2 eyes. Facial muscles and sense of taste, hearing, and equilibrium. Glossopharyngeal. Glossop means pharyngeal because we have fangs, so it's down the upper throat. This vagus nerve is a cranial nerve, but it goes pretty far down into the abdomen. So some of these organs down in the thorax and the accessory cranial nerve controls some muscles of the upper, the shoulders and the neck. It could also control some muscles of the tongue. You don't need to know any mnemonic devices, but you don't need to know all these things. Okay, spinal nerves. Remember spinal nerves? Spinal nerves and cranial nerves are parts of the peripheral nerves. The spinal nerves are not in the spinal cord; they connect to the spinal cord. So that's what's shown here. These are the spinal cord is down through the vertebral column, but all these nerves that connect to it and that radiate out to different parts of the body are the spinal nerves. There's 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Each spinal nerve has, well, let's look at here. Each spinal nerve um, there's a left and right spinal nerve, so this would be the vertebra, that one. So this, so that's posterior, this is anterior. So the spinal, left and right spinal nerve attached to the spinal cord. The where each spinal nerve connects to the spinal cord, there's anterior and posterior teeth. And so the posterior and anterior roots come together, and then out to the left and right, farther away from the spinal cord, these spinal nerves branch out. And these branches, one of these branches is called a ramus. So here's a posterior ramus, anterior ramus. We'll see later that we'll wait to talk about that. This word plexus means a plexus is just like a cluster or a network of neurons that are connected to each other, and some of them just look like a tangled mess of neurons. You can find a better picture of. Yeah, so these are plexuses for each of these is a spinal nerve, and then see the spinal nerve branch, and then this branch from this spinal nerve connected to this spinal nerve, and then this one branch. And they come together and they branch apart, and so that interconnected system of neurons is called a plexus. I'm sorry, this PowerPoint is a disorganized mess. I'm sorry about this. Okay, here there's right in the middle of the PowerPoint is stuff about aging. I don't know, it doesn't make sense that it's here, but okay, a loss of neurons with age, diminished capacity for sending nerve impulses to and from the brain, diminished ability to process information, decreased conduction velocity, so everything slows down with age. Slowing of voluntary motor movements, increased reflex time, so it takes longer for a reflex to happen, and then degenerative changes in the special senses, vision, hearing, sight, taste. So this is really without Alzheimer's disease. It's just getting old. Okay, we mentioned strokes and TIAs or mini strokes last week. A CVA, cerebrovascular accident, that's what we call a stroke. A TIA, a transient ischemic attack is a mini stroke. Transient means temporary, because the difference between these is how long it lasts. If it lasts just less than 4 or 5 minutes, so there's no permanent brain damage, no death of neurons, then we call it a TIA. If it lasts longer than that, so there's permanent brain damage, then it's a stroke. And it can be caused by hemorrhage, which just means bleeding, an embolus, some kind of a blood clot that, or any kind of clot that blocks, any blockage to a blood vessel going to the brain or in the brain. Atherosclerosis, which is just buildup of plaque on the inside of blood vessels, usually arteries. So the open space, the lumen or the hollow space in the vessel just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, less and less blood flow through it. And sometimes chunks of that plaque can break off, and that can get to a narrow place in the artery and form a blockage. The symptoms of a TIA or a stroke, symptoms can be similar. Dizziness, weakness, paralysis, dropping of one side of the face, slurred speech, loss of vision, nausea, vomiting. Sometimes one thing you could ask the person to hold both hands out in front equally, and they can't do it. They'll be like this or like this. And so if the stroke is on the left side, the brain usually affects the right side of the body, and vice versa. Risk factors: high blood pressure, cholesterol, heart disease, narrowed carotid arteries, so atherosclerosis, diabetes, smoking, obesity, and abusing alcohol. What do you do for if somebody in your home has a stroke? What do you do? Just get them to the hospital as soon as possible. As soon as possible. There's not much first aid you can do for a stroke. It's a sad thing to see if it does damage. Because it can change a person's life forever. Alzheimer's, we just got a good lesson on Alzheimer's disease, so I don't need to say a whole lot more about that. Parts of the brain, we already know that stuff. It's more about spinal cord and spinal nerves. Function of the spinal cord, processing reflexes. We'll learn a little more about reflexes, but some reflexes don't involve the brain at all. That is the integration or the decision for a reflex is in the spinal cord. It doesn't even involve the brain. Integration of EPSBs and IPSBs are graded potentials. There are neuron cell bodies within the spinal cord where action potentials can originate. So that's what this is about. And of course, sensory and motor impulses to and from the brain. Spinal cord protected, just like the brain, protected by bone. It's surrounded by the spinal cord is surrounded by the vertebrae. The vertebral foramen, or the hole through each of the vertebrae, has the spinal cord passing through it. And then the same three meninges that cover the brain cover the spinal cord, and the cerebrospinal fluid also provides some protection. A little layer, like a little layer of cushioning. Yeah. Spinal tap is just an insertion of a needle into the spinal cord to withdraw some cerebrospinal fluid. This would be a diagnostic process, like what who was it? Was it one of you guys referenced spinal tap for a test for? Uh, hey, there's a picture of a piece of the spinal cord and the vertebra surrounding it, with the layers of the meninges. So the dura mater out here, and then it's hard to make out all of them. But the pia mater is right on the surface of the spinal cord, and the arachnoid is in between somewhere. Again, section of the spinal cord with left and right spinal nerves attached. So here's the roots, the posterior and anterior root of the spinal nerve that connect. These branches out here would be the rami. Rami is plural of ramus. It shows the three layers of the meninges covering the spinal cord. We already talked a little bit about the gray and white matter of the spinal cord. There's that central canal, this little hollow tunnel right through the center that has spinal or cerebrospinal fluid flowing through it. Here's another view of a section of the spinal cord with spinal nerves attached, and the anterior and posterior roots of the spinal nerves. So this anterior is this way, posterior is that way, and it shows. And what you need to know from this is that the anterior root has motor neurons in it, and the posterior root has sensory neurons. So this would be a sensory receptor in the skin, a touch receptor or something. So the nerve impulses come through those through the spinal nerve, and then through the posterior root of the spinal nerve to get to the spinal cord, and then motor impulses come out through the neuron in the anterior spinal nerve. There's 31 pairs of these spinal nerves that are attached to the spinal cord at levels all the way from the cervical vertebrae all the way down to the coccyx. So there's 8 pairs of cervical nerves, cervical spinal nerves, 12 pairs of thoracic, 5 pairs of lumbar, and down at the level of the sacrum, there's 5 sacral nerves and 5 pairs, and 1 pair of coccygeal at the level of the coccyx or the tailbone. And the roots of these spinal nerves pass through little openings in or between the vertebrae where they connect to the spinal cord. Sample questions. They already talked about the posterior roots of the spinal nerves have only sensory, and the anterior have only motor. And said that some of the cranial nerves are sensory only and some are mixed. Well, all of the spinal nerves are mixed. They have both sensory and motor neurons. All the spinal nerves. Here again, we see that all these spinal nerves. The C ones are cervical, thoracic, then lumbar, and then sacral, and then the very bottom one is coccygeal at the coccyx. Another diagram showing the same thing. These spinal nerves are covered with this connective tissue covering called epineurium. You don't need to know that word. These rami, the branches, already talked about them, the branches of the spinal nerves. Okay, plexuses. Sorry, this slide is a mess here. But, some of these plexuses have names. So this cervical plexus, it's just this network of nerves here. Cervical nerves, cervical spinal nerves, how they merge together and then they split apart again, and they're all interconnected. It's called a plexus. There's a brachial plexus. This is the one that leads to the arms. All these nerves are all interconnected. The lumbar plexus, down at the level of the lumbar vertebrae, obviously. These are nerves that lead down into the legs. And sacral plexus, this one includes the sciatic nerve here. So these are a bunch of lumbar and sacral nerves that merge together to form this great big fat nerve. This is the biggest nerve in the body. It's called the sciatic nerve. And it runs down the leg. And this is one that can cause this condition called sciatica, which can be because of pinching of the pressure on the sciatic nerve, where it could be because where these one or more of these spinal nerves is pinched at the vertebra, pinched in between the backbones, or I had this for a few months myself a few years ago. I read up on it a lot. I found that it's in a lot of cases it's thought to be because where the sciatic nerve passes through some muscles in the butt. It gets pinched in between some muscles, which causes a dull pain right in the side of your butt, and somebody's poking you real hard right there in that notch. And it can run out, extend down the legs. Some people it goes all the way to their foot. Pain, numbness, annoying. What's that? Yeah. It's a difficult condition. A lot of people have it for years and years. I read about online. I read everything I could find about therapy exercises, and I did them, and I don't know if it helped, but it eventually went away. Okay, dermatomes. These are just areas of the skin that are color coded on here or numbered. Each one of these dermatomes is connected to the brain by a certain nerve or set of nerves. So neurologists have mapped this out mapped out where these dermatomes are. Um, and, um, so this information is sometimes used by neurologists uh, to try to determine which, if a patient has some kind of neurological problems, if try to determine which nerves are involved. So um, if we know that this L4 is connected to the brain by a certain what that means. The L4 nerves, L4 spinal nerves connect this part of the leg to the brain. So, if we approach this patient here, he doesn't feel anything. There's something wrong with the L4 nerve. Uh, the the sensory nerve impulses are not reaching to the brain through the L4 nerve. Uh, okay, a little bit more about spinal cord. The word tract means the same as a nerve. A tract is the same as a nerve, except that they're both bundles of axons, but a nerve is in the peripheral nervous system, the spinal and cranial nerves. But if it's a bundle of axons in the central nervous system, in the spinal cord, we call it a tract. It's the same thing. Um, okay, reflexes. Let me talk about reflexes. We're done, right? 5 minutes over. Okay, we'll talk about it. I went over on my presentation time, so we'll finish this up next time. So everybody got someplace to go for Thanksgiving? No? Nothing's happening at my house. So. Oh, sorry.